In 1952, in Osaka, Japan, a company was created called Hakko, with no more than 10 people working in it. Hakko didn't invent the soldering iron, it didn't invent anything. Americans have been already building soldering irons for over a century by now, and brands like Weller have already perfected them. This little Japanese company was small, late, and unknown, but still, Hakko will out-engineer every single one of them and become the standard for the entire world to copy. And here is the story how that happened. It begins as Hakko Metal Industries in 1952, that tiny company in Japan of about 10 people working in it. In market that dominated, established by Western companies, a small newcomer had every reason to stay small. But Hakko had one obsession that would define everything that followed. Instead of copying something that already exists, they wanted to make something better, something new, and they moved fast with doing that. Within only 6 years, by 1958, Hakko wasn't only selling across Japan, it was exporting soldering tools internationally to a world that was hungry for it. But selling wasn't the goal. Hakko understood something that a lot of big companies forget the moment they get successful. So instead of resting on early sales, they invested their time, resources into development and research. And that decision is the entire reason why we are talking about this company today. Because what came out of this lab didn't just improve Hakko's products, it rested the standard for the whole industry. The first breakthrough came in 1976, and that was the Hakko's ceramic heating element. Now, to understand why this mattered, you have to understand how the soldering irons worked back in the day. So you can click on the link and watch my previous video if you're curious, but I will talk about this here a little quick. In short, all of them used a nichrome wire. It was reliable and cheap. But the problem was, it was too slow. It heated up really slowly. And Hakko company wanted to change that. And Hakko's engineers threw that away with a technique called soldering. They applied an incredibly thin layer of metal conductor onto ceramic rolled into a tube and curved it at a high temperature. The result was a tiny, powerful heating element with a low thermal mass that could heat up and cool down almost instantly. With excellent thermal recovery, it could resist temperatures up to 700 degrees Celsius. That's far more than soldering even needs. It was fundamentally better way to create heat, and it rippled out to the whole industry. 3 years later, in 1979, they made a next blow, a soldering station with temperature stabilization. Before this, your iron just got hot as it is. You couldn't adjust the heat. Hakko's station held the set temperature steadily and precisely. For professionals that needed consistency, this was a beginning of a new era. And again, everyone was left behind trying to catch up with Hakko. This kind of precision will prove, especially decades later, when lead-free soldering became mandatory in 2006, requiring tighter temperature control than traditional thin lathe work ever demanded. Then came the tool that changed Hakko from an innovator into a legend, the Hakko 936. This soldering station, with the ceramic piece we talked about, paired with a removable tip system called 900M series, became one of the most successful products in Hakko's history. It quickly became a benchmark for professional use. And here is the truest measure of how good it actually was. The industry couldn't stop copying it. Till this day, the 936 model is the one of the most copied soldering iron models ever made. You can find imitations everywhere with ceramic elements or cheap nichrome ones, with built-in displays or without. The 900M series tips it used is still the most popular soldering style there is in the world, copied in country after country. Even modern competitors like Metka or JBC tools exist in an industry whose Hakko largely defined. When competitors spend decades cloning your design, It's not a coincidence. It's you having set the standard for them. And the 936 raced almost perfectly with the surface mount technology, or SMT, in electronics manufacturing. As the board shrunk and the components got smaller, a controllable heat was everything you will need. And the 936 was built exactly for that. But what really separates Hakko is what they did next, because they didn't even stop at their own masterpiece. Those famous 900M tips had one little weakness. Between the heating element and the tip itself, there was a little air gap. That gap actually protected the element from thermal expansion, but it also slowed down how fast the heat moved from the element to the tip. Most companies would just live on with that small of a flaw, but not Hakko. Hakko went back to the drawing board and they solved it by fusing the heating element with the temperature sensor and the tip itself into one unit. No more air gap, and that became the T12 tip. That exact technology is still used in the most professional irons, delivering nearly instant heat in the place where the work happens. And this is how a T12 looks in real life. I use it, and a lot of people still use it because it's genius. They didn't invent a soldering iron. They took what already existed, and every single time they found a flaw that everyone else accepted, and they engineered it away. The ceramic element, the temperature stabilization, the 936, and of course the T12 tip. Each one the case of Hakko looking into the industry and deciding that it isn't good enough and it needs to be better. And that's the reason why 10 people factory from Osaka in 1952 now supplies soldering tools to more than 60 countries and sits at the top of the entire trade. So next time that someone hands you over a soldering iron with a ceramic tip, a steady temperature control, and a tip that heats in seconds, look closely, because whatever company is stamped on the soldering iron, it's most certainly traced back from the small company in Japan that just refused to copy what came before. Hakko didn't win by being first like Weller was. They won by being better over and over again, until the whole world was copying them instead. So if you enjoyed this, subscribe to Tip and Tin, and I see you in the next one. Bye.